I was retired from the military, so I had time to kind of build a company. I was like, I want to do it right if I'm going to do it. And I called agents and brokers and lenders and everybody that was involved in real estate. And I asked them from Seattle to Miami, everyone in between, that were my competitors. So they would give up that information openly. I said, what do you like? What don't you like? What do you want to see different? I couldn't believe that the biggest response that I got was answer the phone.
Hey guys, welcome back to Realestatable, your go-to podcast for raw, real, and relevant information in the real estate world. Today, we have an awesome interview set up with James VanderLinde, and he is our go-to home inspector here in Clarksville.
Yes, Journey Home Inspections has been such an asset to our business, to our clients, and we're so excited to kind of dive in with James today, kind of go over the what's, the ins, and the outs, because I think for me, learning that what you've always done may not be what's best for your business right now. It's a weird revelation.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive in.
All right, guys, let's dive right in with James, our home inspector here in Clarksville, Tennessee. First time on the podcast, on a podcast.
A podcast,
Yes.
but especially our podcast.
Yeah.
His fiance just dropped him off for the recording, and she's
like
yeah. Well, that's what I'm getting to. It's like she goes, "What time should I be back for my son? What time should I be back?"
We're like, we don't care. He can stay here all day.
But James and Tashina are one of the top home inspectors in our area. They are a dream team running an awesome company, building a company based off of values and beliefs that they can be better at home inspections for our industry. So we're super excited to have you here today. You want to talk about, you didn't like get birthed into the home inspection industry.
Yeah.
So talk about your history, because I think that's really cool. What did you do when you grew up?
So I was not grown yet, but I got in the Army, obviously, and then retired from that abruptly, medical retirement, and was not expecting it, didn't know anything about myself, what I wanted to do. So I had to figure that out, and I got with career counselors to the USO and the Pathfinders and things like that. And I jumped around. I say we, but they were my dream team in that whole thing. So I jumped around like 2 different jobs in construction sales and then construction management. And for one reason or another, it just wasn't the right fit. And then one day I was talking to my brother, and he's like, "Why don't you just open your own company?" He's like, "You're retired. Like, what are you doing?" And I was like, "You know what?" I was like, "You're right." I was like, "Why am I doing this?" So I got with them, and I'm like, "I want to be in construction. This is about me and my strengths and my weaknesses, things like that." And we threw some ideas around, and one of them finally said, "What about home inspecting?" And I was like, "I never
What about it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I was like, I really thought about it. And I was like, but it's in the right industry, things like that. And I called my 2 buddies that were home inspectors out of Nashville in the past, and I was like, "What about it? Like, what's it about? Did you like it? Why'd you leave?" Things like that. And they're like, "Man, come to think of it, you'd actually be perfect for that."
When you think of James, you think of home inspection. So I'm like, I want to know, what was the history behind that? Because like, I don't know. I just feel like that is like your driven purpose for sure, and building a super great thing.
It's weird how much I connected to the business, and not so much home inspecting because it's so monotonous, and I'm not big into monotony, but it's easy enough that it doesn't suck the life out of you and you don't hate going to work every day. But this side of it, talking to agents and building relationships and taking care of people and protecting people, and then going out there and marketing and doing all that stuff, that was the part where I really enjoyed it, and it gave me the opportunity to do that, because as you know, real estate, here we are, it's all about image and community and all these different things. So it allowed me to flex that muscle, and I'm good at it. And I tell people all the time, it's actually funny, because I'm more uncomfortable in front of a camera than 20,000 people.
Right.
I don't, it's
Same.
weird talking to a camera because it doesn't do anything back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like talking to agents and clients and going out and doing these different meetings and things, that's where I enjoy this, and it really fit.
Yeah.
So it just so happened to, wherever I got it from, I don't know, my business mind, but maybe the Army, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, like we were talking about, what would be most valuable to talk with the home inspector in general. Of course, thought of you immediately, but I think that everyone has a great company necessarily that they're able to go, okay, when I think of home inspections, when I think of taking care of my clients, when I think of like top of the line service, because really, like you said, home inspections can be so monotonous, and really what sets you apart. And so Ashlee was brainstorming some questions of like, okay, for the listeners that are not necessarily in our market, what are some things that we should be doing as professionals? So you want to dive into those kind of questions?
Yeah. So I was trying to think of like, what are some things agents should look for when they're trying to find a home inspector to partner with or recommend to their clients? Like, what are some good qualities that you could find in a home inspector?
So really, that was something I focused on very early. And when I was retired from the military, so I had time to kind of build a company. I was like, I want to do it right if I'm going to do it. And I called agents and brokers and lenders and everybody that was involved in real estate. And I asked them from Seattle to Miami, everyone in between, that were my competitors. So they would give up that information openly. I said, what do you like? What don't you like? What do you want to see different? I couldn't believe that the biggest response that I got was answer the phone. Yeah. And I was like, there's no shot that that's the biggest problem in this industry. And
except for Tashina answers on the second ring like clockwork.
I know. I mean, she's like clockwork. She's superhuman. I don't know.
Well, and when she's in person, she's super present in person. So I'm like, what's happening? Like, how are you doing two things at one time? So that is when I think of Journey, I think, okay, call them real quick. They'll answer, and it's not like, I'm in the crawl space right now. I'm about to fall off a roof. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Gonna answer.
And I tried to do that when I was just me. You know what I mean? And I'd answer the phone and I'd be at my respirator. What's up? And they're like, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm in a crawl space. They're like, and you're answering the phone? I was like,
hey, at no cost.
You know what I mean? Whatever. Yeah. So I guess somebody who answers, like, just drop of a hat, whatever you need, flexibility. But I think the biggest thing, we mirrored real estate and how, like, why would you pick an agent, right? Because I think when it comes to relationships and good relationships, it doesn't matter if it's your marriage, if it's your friends, if it's coworkers, whatever it is. And no matter what anybody says, it's like, you want to get what you give, you know, so when you're trying to, and it's really any business relationship that you can think of, you know what I mean? If you are taking care of me, I'm going to take care of you, and it's going to go round and round. And if you need me, I'll be there. And if, you know, you've got a question, I'm going to answer the phone. And that was why we opened up the 24-hour phone line, not just answering the phone, but if y'all are writing a contract or a repair amendment at, 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, I don't know how to verbiage this. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just an agent. You know what I mean? Like, I need my home inspector, and if my phone shut off at 5.
Yeah. Or you went home from an office at 5 o'clock or something like that. You know what I mean?
So, and then what are you going to do? Wait until the next morning? Real estate's 24 hours a day. So.
Well, and I think that people that have been in the industry for a longer period of time, we get stuck, and we had this conversation in the very beginning, like almost like, hi, I'm James, where we use who we've always used for whole entire eternity of whatever, and we don't change and we don't adapt with change. And it's like Ashlee's worst nightmare dealing with me of zero change to death do us part. But I think that, like, that is so true, especially as agents. Like, we have adapted with changes in what people are needing and what, humans are craving and needing. And so hearing that was such a breath of fresh air. And I think it's like the meat and the potatoes. So it's not just the sales pitch. Like, when you guys are thinking about these home inspectors, like, okay, if you've used the person you've used for 20 years, is that person still doing that level of service, not only for you, but for your clients? And if they're not, are you considering and thinking outside of the box? I know for us as agents, we cannot be solely suggesting one type of provider for the different things that we refer through our business. But if you are using the same 3 people from 20 years ago, are they just thinking they have that business, or are they earning that business every single time that you reach out to them? And so I think that was a really big wake up call for me, because I was doing the same thing. And on some networking, James, it was like full force James. And it was funny because in the conversation, you're like, I don't care if you use me as an inspector or not. I just love people, and there's probably some drinks involved or something. And so, but it was like, but I walked away from that and I was like, wait, I don't have that with not with lenders, not with home inspectors. So the impression of like, I just want to be there to be a value for people. Mm-hmm. And there's been times when we've had like questions where it's like that you haven't even done the home inspection, and they're like, well, call James. He'll be able to just, or that has nothing to do with ever being at the stage of a home inspection. It's like source of reference. Think of Journey Home Inspection. Are you guys partnered with somebody that has that? And if not, okay, maybe it's not in your area, your market area, et cetera, but you should be aggressively looking for that approach where you have a go-to person that you're like, when you think of it, immediately you know that's who that is. And so kudos to you for sure on that. One of the things I want to talk about, because when we're talking with our clients, they know like experience. So talk about like the training. It's not like you're 100 years old. It's not like you've done inspections for 50 years. Now you need to go to our social media to see if James, vote for James. Does he look 100 years old?
Yeah.
But
I got the chain to look younger.
The chain. Oh my gosh.
Bait and click. You guys are all going to be rushing to our social. But what kind of training, like what is the legit like Harvard of inspections versus like the online university training? Like what is the difference in that? Because like for me, when I'm talking with clients, it's like all I can speak about is how long have you been in the business, or oh, they came from this construction background, or whatever. And so maybe it's like where agents are like, well, no, because that's a newer inspection in town. Because if we didn't ever give a newer company in town a chance, our agent or our buyers are like raving reviews after the fact, raving like almost like a client for life, where they think as homeowners, I have a question, you're the go-to company to go, well, let me start with Journey. And it could have nothing to do with anything that you inspected or did before. So talk about newer companies, the best training, like what should they be looking for when it comes to that?
So, and again, I was going to lead into this a little bit. Everything is a ripple effect. Everything echoes off that initial trust and that willingness to do whatever you can do, because your product also it has to mirror that. So a lot of training, the volume of training that they get coming in is important. But I mean, we use AHIT, American Home Inspectors Training, and I've never used a different school. And I feel like I was guided. I'm a Christian, so I think it was God, obviously, but and everything in this process of building this company was guided, and I found AHIT, and I've hired inspectors that weren't AHIT certified, and it's like you could tell the education level and the knowledge. But even after they get out, it's every home inspection company, it's a 90-hour course in Tennessee. It's a 90-hour course, and they go through, and then there's a on-site for a week that's optional. I did the when I was by myself because I wanted to experience that, but now my guys don't have to do that because I give them that on-site for a week. So, and I call it giving my guys the green light, and it's not a to time thing. It's a to standard thing. And I called it my 3 weeks. So it's crawl, walk, run. And it's a shadow period. They shadow me, then it's reverse shadow. I shadow them, and I'm over their shoulder. And throughout that week, I kind of ease off a little bit. And then they're actually in the field, but it's a review. And I call my review week, because sometimes some guys, it takes a little bit longer. Some it's a lot quicker, but I'm reviewing all the reports before they submit them to make sure the product is mirrored exactly. And they're getting the same thing over and over again. It's a lot harder that way. And it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears going into it. And those are the hardest weeks. But I think at the end of the day, it may not matter so much what school they go to, but it's how much they dedicate to it. Very quickly, you can figure that out. I mean, we got a call today, and it was like an accidental call. They were like, hey, this happened at this property, and they said the HVAC just didn't work. That was all they told us. It just, HVAC doesn't work. And they're like, what was that about? And they're like, well, we're like, what's the address? And that didn't sound like us. I was like, but never know. My guys can make mistakes.
Yeah.
I don't make mistakes.
Of course
not. Same.
But I was like, maybe they made a mistake. And it was not an address that we did. And we're like, hey, I don't think we did that one. And they pulled it up, like, oh, no,
accidentally called.
Yeah, right. And I was like, cheating on me. You know what I mean?
That buyer made bad decisions.
Yeah, horrible decisions. It's like, and you're cheating
Google
on
gone
me. I'll
wrong.
remember this. So, but it was a good, I appreciated that call just because it kind of gave you an insight to what these buyers are dealing with on the other things. And
it just doesn't work. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Any guidance on what to do?
HVAC guy and then the HVAC guy showed up and it worked. So,
oh gosh.
Yeah, but I know that stuff never happens.
Yeah.
Like the whole theory behind doing one inspection a day was not rushing through an inspection. And if there was an issue, we can kind of run it down. And it's going to take us longer. We're going to be there longer, but we allocate a day to that so that we can have clients and really give them all the information that we can find on it. So,
you guys all only do one inspection a day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Didn't realize that was important until we started partnering with them, because it was funny, because it would be like, okay, I know you'll be able to get in at 6 a.m. if it's vacant, 9 a.m. if it's occupied, and then he'll scoot, like inspectors in general. And then there's options like after time, what works best for you, where you're like, cool, I can do 6, 9, but that's the only thing I'm doing, and I'm focused only on that. And never even thought of that concept being just exactly what that is. But I also think that, like, at first I was scared about, well, if I come to Journey, I want to see James. Like, James is the only competent one, right? But I expect people to come to
people do that to you all the time. Yeah.
But I expect people to be to my very well competent agent. So but it was funny having the conversation with Tashina, who basically runs operations for you guys, talking about, okay, I get it, but if you have a timeline, you really should try this extremely highly trained other inspector within the company. So I would encourage you guys too, if you're the same way, where you're like, okay, I'm only going with Mr. Inspector, and not a company that has multiple. What you just described was the layer of quality, where if you're by yourself, where is the accountability that you have within a company, as far as that goes? I think it really just depends on seeking out and really vetting those scenarios that you have for options that are in your market, for sure.
Yeah, I think too, what sets you guys apart is the communication aspect. Not only do you guys answer the phone, but I remember the very first time I used you guys, I think it was Phil came out and he called me as I was still driving home. Like, he was like, hey, because I came to like the last bit of the home inspection. And he was like, hey, this was concerned. I talked to the buyer about it and whatever. And so, like, just getting a phone call explaining what's wrong or like what the major concerns are versus seeing a report and being like, okay, let me figure out what a big concern on this report. So I think the communication, if you're looking for an inspector partner, to just make sure that they have the communication, even if you don't like calling, see if they'll text you. I don't know. But if you don't want to answer your phone, maybe don't find an inspector that communicates a lot. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe don't be in this industry.
If you don't want that.
If you don't want that.
I don't want to work anyway.
Well, I think though that I think that whole concept of this too, like the expectation for the consumer, they're wanting to be communicated, even if they're like, email, whatever. This is such a vital step to it. Yeah, this is such a vital step to it. But I also think that makes them sit in a more comfortable position, knowing, like, a knowledge is power kind of thing. Not necessarily where they're like, oh, cool, I'm comfortable with this disaster that was just inspected. It's like they know exactly what they're getting, and they know they have like power in deciding what they're going to do, like how they're going to navigate the next step. I think that's totally true with the amount that your inspectors are communicating and educating and really going through, and not so much, because I know so many agents really feel like, okay, the more that they know, the more like that it's scary it becomes. Like the more that they talk about radon, mold, or structural, or all of those things, and I feel like
this deal's done.
When I feel like the exact opposite, where I'm like, okay, from all the years, I'm like, this is a deal killer. And then they come back and they're like, nope, talk to James, feeling really confident. Yeah. This is what I got to do. Like Katie just came up with that with her client from across the river that is selling and buying. And it was like, structural, no problem. We'll handle that later. It was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then we almost had to backtrack. But then when we get educated and communicated about it, I was like, yeah, that is no problem. Yeah. That's really, what would be, it's still flagged as major, which would be a major deal breaker. It's like, no, educated, informed, and you having the power and the decision making. I think that's another thing to be vetting your inspectors through as well. It's not like you're guiding like, hey, deal breaker or massive problem. It's here's the information, and then them feeling empowered through that.
And an easy way to do that, I guess, if you're like recruiting, right? It's kind of harsh, but if you're trying to find somebody, you're like, hey, I'm feeling it with the one I'm with, and I want to try somebody new, but there's a whole sea of them, and a lot of these home inspectors are part-time guys. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But there's so many part-time ones, and they're one guy shows, and this and that and the other. It's hard to figure out. How many are you gonna call? But yeah. You can sit down and have lunch with them. You just do a phone call, even say, hey, if you ran into this situation, and I was a client, how would you communicate that to me? And you can just ask vague questions like that, and put them in that situation and see how they handle it or how they respond to it, because the whole, and this was probably, I don't know where this came from, where this realization came from, and I was actually in a benchmark presentation, and I didn't know who was sitting in it, and a broker like 3 times promoted and then removed and did his own thing, but he's still involved with benchmark, and he was actually sitting in there, and I said, the most important thing for home inspectors to understand is the relationship between the home inspector, the client, and the agent. And I said, these agents will take these clients sometimes on a 2-year journey trying to find a house. Journey. That's why I named it that. 2-year journey.
Marketing plug.
Yeah, shameless plug, by the way. But this 2-year journey, sometimes longer, sometimes less, and even sometimes the less, they're fitting in more houses because the buyers have no idea what they want. They're just blasting at it, trying to figure out what they want and narrow it down. But all those hours and all that time that y'all put in to find their house, and then the client finally finds one that they love.
Finally.
And they're like, that's it, right? And the agent's like, oh, thank God, we found it. And then they're in there, and then here comes the home inspector, right? And what we do is so crucial to that entire process, and home inspectors miss that mark so much, that if you would just communicate and have that kind of awareness to piece in that puzzle, you would approach it differently. And we are there to educate, and at the end of the goal should be to get them into that house while protecting them. Yeah. So if they're protected and they are knowledgeable and everything, and it's not a bad investment, then they should be in that house. But your job is to make sure that they know what they need to know about it, whether it's stuff they're going to take care of later or stuff they're going to take care of now that they deem important to get done now before they get in the house. But proper communication will make that list or that determination of what's not. That way, it's like, it's not, we're not the bad guys anymore.
Yeah. Because
for so long, home inspectors, this industry has only been around since the 80s.
Yeah.
And so there's only been like 2 generations of home inspectors. So there was the way it was done, the way it is done. And if companies like us don't start stepping up and changing that narrative, then it's just never going to happen. It's going to stay the same. So.
Well, and one of the things actually for me, when I first was like, okay, journey, they got it figured out, right? So as we're starting to see inspections come through, so used to, like, I would be so excited when I got a 12-page inspection report, which basically was nothing then at the house, and nothing was.
There's 112.
And then and what's funny is James and Elle, they're like, hey, we're giving you a full. I'm like, never fully prepared for 112 pages to hit your inbox. So literally, I don't know that there's a time that Journey has had an inspection come to me under 100 pages.
Probably not.
But the approach that they have, and this is something to evaluate. If you have an inspection report and it's like, nothing to note, like there's nothing to report on the house, good, bad, whatever. So it's kind of like when you have a child coming home from school and the report card only reports when they are terrible. Like this is the bad kid report.
You did bad.
Yeah. And so with Journey and like looking at the inspection reports that you guys are currently partnering with, is it an actual inspection report or is it like the naughty list? Like, is this only the kids that are getting suspended from school? Those houses only get the actual reporting that you're paying for. And for so long, I was like, yes, short report, super easy. But for the consumer, is that actually getting them what they paid for? Is this the actual product? And is this really educating and honestly giving them a starting base for what they're purchasing? And so talk about your inspection report, because honestly, I think that maybe some have caught on, but for sure that approach is something we only see with Journey here in our marketplace.
And I'm willing to give away all my secrets if anybody calls and asks, because I want that to echo and more home inspectors be doing that. Because look, at the end of the day, no one's gonna service anybody. My agent's better than I am, so I'm not worried about it. Like if every home inspector started just replicating our product, like that's fine. That's a good thing.
I mean, that's why we do the podcast.
Yeah,
we literally share everything that we are doing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but actually putting in the work is the part that you're like,
and a lot of people don't want to do it.
No, nobody wants to do that.
And so, if I find somebody that had the willingness to and the drive and everything else to replicate it, and I can't do everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And nor do I want to. So
you told me before, if I find someone who has all that, I'm gonna hire them.
Yeah, that's facts. Come on. You know
Come on, let's just partner together. We're gonna do it all together, change the face of inspection.
So, and as far as the report goes, I mean, the reason it's 100 pages, it's the same information. There's just more of it. So you get a lot of pictures in there. There's I feel, and I was like, because I've had home inspections before and I remember them, and I compared the ones that I've gotten to what I wanted to see. I was like, if I was buying a house, what would I want to see? Especially because we're in a military town. I just did one yesterday for clients in Korea.
Yeah.
Sight unseen. You hear it all the time. And like, I had an agent that's a good friend of mine. I just talked to them. Like, yeah, we bought this house sight unseen. If we had seen it, we wouldn't have bought this house. Well, if you go through our reports, there's a ton of pictures. This is what the whole inside, you can literally piece it together like a puzzle and see your whole house. And it shows finishes and colors and things like that. It's like, okay, if they're in Korea and they want to pick out lawn furniture or patio furniture or whatever, and they want to see like what's the siding colors, like we give you up close pictures of your siding and your brick colors and things like that. So it's all in there, because I was like, man, if they're gonna pay me $500-$600 for something, I'm just gonna go like this. That's
which is happening in the competitors. It's happening. So
and so I was like, I'm gonna give them something. Even if I have a new construction house has 4 defects, that one yesterday had 4 defects on it, super clean. I felt like I was like, I don't even know what they paid for. But when you look at the report, you're like, okay, I know what I paid for. It was all in there. And they go, most people, I would probably say 80% of America or even the world, when they look at their house, they don't know where these things are, what these components are when they look at something like, I don't know what that is or how it works. So, main power shutoffs, the main service disconnect on their house. Some of them are outside, some are inside. Main water shutoffs are sometimes in closets, sometimes they're in the crawl space, sometimes they're in the garage. You don't really know.
Yeah.
So imagine somebody had a leak in their house. They're like, oh, how do I shut my water off?
Yeah.
Well, if I educated them, they should know exactly where
it's at. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They go cut it off, and it saves them a bunch of damage. Or, for instance, I did a gigantic house in Nashville. That's big, beautiful. I think it was like $900,000, something like that. And obviously, it's a higher end house. They're gonna have a lot of stuff in there, and they're gonna have a security system. I'm willing to bet. Well, I found the main power shutoff on the outside with the HVAC disconnects and things like that. And I said, hey, just so you know, this is where your main power shutoff is. It's on the outside of your house.
Oh, wow.
So if you're going to have a security system in here, some of them have battery backups, things like that. But they got to have some kind of power to hook the internet up to talk to the cops, right?
Mhm.
So if somebody comes out and kills your power, the alarm might go off. It might record some stuff, but the cops probably aren't going to, at a minimum, the cops aren't going to get here.
Yeah.
So I said, if you do put a security system in here and you're going to put a lot of valuable things in here, make sure you put a lock on this panel. And so
Just like educating that. It's like that has nothing to do with like nothing wrong.
No, home. It's not.
So, okay, a question that's not really, it's related, but it's not. Is your shutoff thing not in your electrical panel?
It is. Yeah.
So why is theirs outside?
Well, sometimes you'll have two panels. So you have main panels, sub panels, things like that. So
my sub panels in the garage, though.
Like at the townhouses, the same thing at the end of that building. There's a main, and then the electrical box too.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
and I need your house inspected.
Yeah, I don't want to, honestly. I was thinking about it, and I was like, I noticed things where I'm like, oh God, I know I need to fix that. Something's wrong with it. And I thought about that the other day, because one of the questions I was going to ask is how often or how long should you go between like buying your house and getting a home inspection versus just like we've been in our house since 2016. So like, it's probably time. And I'm terrified because I'm like, oh God, what is it?
And I inspect our investment properties every couple of years. Excuse me. And I don't do that with my own personal house or like radon testing. We just, Katie just came up on that. And I was like, but honestly, it's not getting our houses are not getting any nicer or better condition by not inspecting it. Like, you're like, I don't want to know, but
and to that point, that's why people think we're saying it because we want to make money, which obviously I'm a business owner, I want to make money, but we say every year, because if you don't get your house inspected since 2016, if there is an issue, and it's
going to be worse.
It could be super cheap and easy now, but 6 years later, now you've got a bigger issue, and we can usually catch it before it becomes a big repair. You do a quick fix real quick, you're good. You spent $400, you saved yourself $4,000. So,
wow, saving money.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people don't look at it that way, but
no, I know
it's inspector math here.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, inspector math.
Inspector math. You can totally save money.
Exactly.
Let Mark know tonight.
Oh my gosh, no, because then he's going to be like, I'm going to have a list of things to do.
Yeah. That is true. That's true.
And it's hard to fight that fight. We are the boogeymen of the industry.
Yeah.
And I try.
You and appraisers.
Yeah. Well, appraisers are worse than us.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think that's a little bit more scary with that. I think when I saw the first 100+ page report, I was so used to, and again, old school, like the first generation of home inspectors, where you had to comb through those pages. And so it was funny because for me, I'm going 100 miles an hour, and you're like, hey, I need to sit down and train you on how to read a report. I'm like, I know how to read a report. Like, let's scroll this PDF. I get this first thing, and I'm like, what am I supposed to be asking for? What does the buyer know what's wrong with the house? And so I think that was, remember when I'm like, hey, can you come train us?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I told you.
They told you so. But some of these new programs, it breaks it down. So it's like, it's a report of the house, but then it breaks it down where you're like, hey, you just go to this section, and this is where everything is flagged out of
what the summary.
Yep,
well, that's a new thing, guys, and I would love some support for those that have been in the business for a minute.
The summary is where it's at, like literally.
Yep.
But I was like, I cannot spend how many hours going through 112 pages, and so I would encourage you guys to, if you're like, I'm not switching to 112 page inspector. There's a cool little feature thing, and you really should just be trained on that. That's
and the report's more for the clients, all that information, than the summary's got your defects on it. So it's what you would normally typically see. It's very condensed. It's just got your defects with your verbiage on it and recommendations and things like that. So,
So I got a random question from a client today who they're no longer living in the property, but there could potentially be money hidden in the house. And so I thought this would be a good question to ask you. Where do you think the money would be hidden in a house?
So if I remember right, it was the husband, correct?
Yeah.
Because that's a big...
Oh, yeah. It was the husband who hid it, yes.
And it's not like a 1920s, and this is not like an 80-year-old man that would have
pulled the brick out. And
it would be someone middle-aged that would have hidden it before he passed. And so, or during, like, while they lived in this house. And so...
Yeah.
I don't know.
So if it were me, I know nobody's going in the attic I wouldn't put it in the crawl space because of moisture, but I know if you drive up there in the attic, so attic would probably be the first place I would hide anything under. And pull up a piece of wood. It could be underneath there. And
the condition of this house is about to rapidly change.
Oh yeah. No, but and then in air returns, things like that, where places nobody would go is where I would be hiding stuff. And pretty much any of your living spaces, there's nowhere to hide it.
Yeah.
I know where I hide Weston's Christmas presents. There's a scuttle hole to a side attic on my bonus room, little door that's in a bathroom. If you go in that's really long, I can put stuff all at the end of that and ain't nobody ever going to find it. So.
You just wait until about 10, 11, 12, 13 years old.
It'll be locked and booby trapped.
they know more crevices in your house than you even knew existed.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. I was a teenage boy once.
I'm thinking of this too. I bet he pulled back some carpet. You need to check with her and see if he pulled back carpet, because that can easily be tacked back down. Pull back carpet and put it.
Well, we had all the carpet replaced.
So then you better go talk to those flooring guy.
Somebody had a bonus.
That's what I would initially thought, but she said she's already scoured and she's not lived in this house for a while. So she's already scoured that. So I know over the years, there has been some crazy stuff that you're like, excuse me, they did what to what for the construction, especially because we sell in Kentucky. And it's like the wild, wild west out there.
Talk about the storm cellar.
Oh gosh. Well, there was one. Were you talking about my storm cellar? Yeah. No, it was a lake. It was not a storm shelter. But it was crazy on that scenario. He went down there and he calls me. He's like, there is crystal clear water to my shins in this crawl space, like literally. And I could hear it was like he was lapping in the lake when he's calling me on the phone. He goes, so did you know this? I was like, yes, we knew that, and we totally offered, and we were so pumped to spend.
They thought it was a swimming pool,
indoor swimming pool.
But never have I seen that where it was crystal clear. That was crazy. Yeah, and that was one of those scenarios that you described before the break, where I had my whole entire life getting to that point, and really found the one, and I was like, of course, there's a swimming pool in the.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. And that happened to be a great thing.
Yeah,
our water table thing.
Yeah,
that's why it was so clear. Concrete is acting like a filter, and I knew what it was as soon as I saw it, and I was like, you can't fix this.
Yeah, there's no fixing that. That was one of the.
So what do you
fill it with concrete maybe, but even that concrete's going to soak up water, and then you're going to have issues with it. I mean,
it was just the water table was built, or the house, like you'd have to
raise the whole house essentially.
Did that deal fall through?
I mean, this was a first time home buyer who now has a new baby that was already. Yeah. Yes, it was like we immediately were like, "Hey, you are not buying this house. There's no conversation to be had. You're not buying this house."
Nope,
so
you don't want to open that can anymore. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, craziest things I've seen are always flips.
Oh yeah,
car jacks holding up floor joists. I'm like, you guys really didn't think to come down here, and it's sad because most home inspectors open a scuttle hole, look around, and then they leave. So they've probably been getting away with it for a long time. But just nothing really surprises me anymore. I don't know. Kentucky is probably the place that surprises me the most. But I did find a hidden room one time, but I didn't find it on the inspection. They had a chalkboard nailed to the wall. So as far as our limitations go, that you can't see that. You don't know it's there. I'm not ripping stuff off the wall.
Yeah.
So they went back and she's like, I'm afraid to open this and you didn't find it. And I said, well, in my picture, and that's why we have so many pictures.
Yep.
I said, I have a picture. There was an entire chalkboard screwed to that wall. That's why I didn't find it. And I said, but I'll come inspect it for you, whatever. And I was scared to open it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was in it?
It was like
Christmas presents that were booby trapped in.
Woo. But I opened it and it was underneath the porch. It was the access to underneath the porch where they had closed in that part of the basement. So there was really nothing in there, but there was a pile of bricks in the bottom of it, just loosely thrown down there. I was like, I don't want to know what's under that. You know what I mean? And
past my limitations of inspector.
Yeah. And there was like this dim light in there. It was just creepy. I don't know. And the house that scared me the most I think it was just happenstance, because on one of our videos on our social media, it's like, what is the scariest thing you found? that house, I opened the garage as Jason Voorhees,
Stop.
like Halloween decorations standing there, and I'm like, I flip on the lights, and I'm like, oh
my gosh.
I had to about go get new bushes on that one.
Oh my gosh.
So hair and everything.
We were talking about this the other day about wishing that we saw the footage from our Ring cameras of our clients and stuff like that. I wonder if they were recording you. Surely they knew that was there for sure. I always watch. There's an agent that isn't with our company out of Maryland. She goes into, like, I swear she has a thing for super creepy basements, but basements up north are a thing, right? And she constantly is reporting on, like, can you believe this is what I'm in today, over and over again. So I'm always curious to know, like, we only see the stuff that our clients have, but like to know what kind of things do you guys see? Any of the guys have any crazy scenarios where it's like,
oh, we all do. I'm sure if you got all on here, you have to have a whole nother episode.
Oh
about
man,
it,
that would be fun. Like
I tell you, 2 days I had a skunk in a crawl space. I was like 2 feet from it.
Oh my gosh. Do you find a lot of dead animals?
Oh, tons.
Yeah, I figured.
What about snakes? Because that's why I couldn't do your job.
I've only found one, and it was a little baby snake. Phillips found like 3.
No.
So he finds more than I do.
Count me out.
Yeah, but it was that skunk was hilarious because I've done so many, I don't run into so much, and I'm just kind of like, well, whatever. And my trainee was like looking around in there, and he's like scoping it out. I'm like, just get in there. There's nothing in there.
Oh
man.
my God.
In there, and I take the ride and feet in front of me.
Like nothing but a snake.
Yeah. Or skunk. He thought I was messing with him.
Did you guys get sprayed and have to drive home in your
thank God, no.
I was saying I don't smell anything, so it should be good.
I'd still smell
it.
It
Still smell like that. You mean like a tomato bath trying to recover from that?
When we had our house in Hopkinsville that we renovated, I don't know why we went back. Maybe just like clear out the last little bit or something, whatever it was. We went down into the basement, which was like, it's a 1940s house, so it's not really a cellar and wet and gross down there. Anyway,
my kind of place.
Yeah, someone laid out like a painter suit, like a paper plasticky thing, and it was like laid out like a body. And I mean, that house wasn't
like a chalk outline.
Yeah, like it wasn't like the best spot. So and the house was vacant, and so I was like, I walked down and I was like, that? Like, what is that?
Someone died in the house that took forever and then forever to sell.
People do creepy stuff.
Oh my
gosh. I don't know who did it or where that suit even came from, but I was like, oh my God, it freaked me out.
Some of these things people have to do on purpose.
Yeah, that's why I'm like that Jason thing. I'm pretty sure you're on some camera on someone's social media making them a ton of money.
I know.
Oh man, just wait for my home inspection at my house.
Yeah, you're gonna.
I'm gonna be in the crawl space. James, nobody's home. It's fine.
Yeah, just go ahead.
You're gonna answer on the ring. Nobody's home.
It's only a little bit of
yeah, you need to. Oh my goodness. Well, to wrap this up, like tips and tricks as far as like finding the right one. If you do not and you cannot find a great home inspector, we just think that you should probably move to Clarksville, Tennessee. I think this is really a recruitment video. If you're an inspector that you're not happy where you're at, and
plural.
Oh, yeah. No,
the heck?
I can't say that in front of her.
You will get.
I got gold last year, so.
She's holding that. She's gonna hold that. She's like, I got gold. I'm a better agent. No, 2 times.
Well, yeah.
You didn't see me wink at you?
Yeah. No, I didn't. Check the footage.
It's like that's why she's sitting between the two of us. But I know that it could be super challenging to be able to figure out. But I think that the biggest thing for me coming away from today is making sure you're not sitting complacent from the inspector or the partners that you have used over the years. Make sure that you're asking the right questions, finding the right people to your clients.
Yeah. And if you don't know where to start or you don't know what questions, call Journey because they answer on the second ring, no matter what. And they can help answer your questions and maybe give you a few to ask another home inspection company.
And if you just want to follow a super great home inspector on social media, they're doing all kinds of fun stuff. Yes. I feel like they're constantly being told. I don't know if it's Social Media Girl or Tashina, but their stuff is super fun to watch, informing. I think there's been stuff that we've shared that's been helpful for our clients. But if you're home media, this is the account to follow. So tell them, where can they find you? Where are you guys at?
Our handle is Journey Home Inspection, no S. So you can look us up on there. Instagram's the best way to find us. We're on TikTok too. I don't know all the handles because I'm not the social media. I'm a dance monkey at this point. So,
and a rapper. It's the same thing.
Yeah. The only thing that I really do myself is those information videos because that's kind of my jam. So but any of the other ones, I've worn a wig. I've done some kind of questionable things. So they're much pros tested, but they told me it'd be great for the page. So I did it.
It'd be great for the gram. It's fine. It's fine.
So I don't know. I've gotten just used to it at this point, but it's stuff on there, good informational stuff for agents, things like that. So
all right. So go find him, and thank you guys for joining us today.
All right. What an awesome interview we had with James. It's always fun to talk to him. He's very social, very knowledgeable in his industry. What would you say your top takeaway is?
So many different things. I think that, like, for me, looking at making sure that I'm clearly describing the differences between the home inspectors when we're suggesting more than one. Like, please pick Journey, please pick Journey. When you're like the first, like, here's your options, please pick Journey, because it makes the job, when you're partnered with the right home inspector, makes it so much easier to get through the start to finish. And so I need to be working on a little bit more of a clear, concise description of the different choices that we have, because we do have really great home inspectors, but I do think that, especially for certain type of buyers, that there are better choices. And so for me, that's my takeaway, just talking through this and just going for each of the home inspectors that you're partnered with. But what about you?
I think if you're trying to find a home inspector, interview, because I think that sometimes, like, especially when you're new and you might not know who the best home inspector is, maybe ask around your office, ask some experienced agents who they use, why they like them, and then actually speak to them. Like I said, communication with Journey has been like 100% always from the first time I've used them. So I really appreciate that. And I love that, I've texted James about a property that I don't even know if you guys inspected it or not, but I was like, hey, who can you recommend for a chimney inspection?
Yep.
And so it was easy. He was like, hey, use this person. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this one, but you can use them if you want. So just finding someone who's going to communicate with you, because we're not home inspectors and we shouldn't pretend like we know how to fix the issues on a home inspection. So I just think, like, the communication is the main thing for me.
And I like what James said too. When you're interviewing, like, literally sit down and interview, ask the questions if this came up, because I know for me over the years, then there's been scenarios like I'm like dead to me, never using that inspector again because of the way that they handled situations. So bring some, like, kind of situational things to the table and see if that you're interviewing or answering them the correct ways as well. But don't be afraid to change, for sure. I think that you definitely should be reevaluating all of the people that you're recommending. It's a real reflection of you as an agent as well.
All right, guys, if you found this helpful, make sure you give it a 5-star review, and we will see you next time on Realestatable.